So now getting into expressions themselves. So you have constant symbols and calls. Constants are itty-bitty syntactic literals. You have numerics, doubles. You can't have an imaginary number. Our complex, I think, can't be represented. And then I have this tiny note here, constants are self-quoting, which means within this character string, I didn't have to write expression, the XPR function, wrap that in there. It'll do it by itself. So that's a constant. That's a little list of our new friends. And then we move up to symbols, which represent the name of an object. And again, expressions are not the same as strings. I wanted to show one of my favorite applications of this because Kaftan, I'm very shiny focused. If you evaluate a string, which could be like a shiny input, that's not going to do anything. This is what the data looked like prior to filtering. But if you evaluate a symbol, then dplyr's filter knows what you're trying to do. So I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in with like their most commonly encountered sim function in source code, but this is how I use it all the time, in like Shiny, turning strings into symbols and then evaluating those columns. Cool. All right, calls. So this section is when my gears started turning for that Shiny app, where you have an expression of a function.
Maya, I have a question.
Uh-oh. Sure.
So do you, no, it was just the last sentence, I was just wondering what you meant. So do you actually really convert all your strings to symbols and that's how you parse them, like in your regular code, or is that for any particular reason that you do that?
If I'm gonna like make a Shiny app where there's a select input, a drop down of like all the column names, Shiny's gonna return that to me as a text string. So I have to turn that into a symbol. But if I'm just like, if I'm doing my own data science pipeline, that for no, like that would just be converting it to a text just to convert it back.
That's exactly what I thought. And I didn't know if you were doing that just to like be really, really conscientious about your programming. So that's why.
No, okay. I think that if someone was writing their code like that, you would be like, lulz, why? Yeah. Again, I'm just trying to grasp at like applications for these things. Not that I don't just love Hadley's examples, but I think expanding on them is good. Okay, so back to calls. So calls are different from functions because they're stringified functions, but not really. They're more like a list. And they're of type language, which is like, okay, just throw more weird stuff at this. But what I thought was cool is we can leverage this prior to a function being evaluated and shove in new stuff into our function before it's evaluated. So like in this, by turning this filtering expression, this filtering function into an expression, I could potentially now subset my list of arguments, and instead of review overall, I could put in some other text string through string replacement. This seems like really convoluted and there's better ways to do this, but I'm just trying to think about scenarios in which you would leverage this. And then this also left me with a question of, if you look at the list that by creating this function as a call, we turn it into this list, and as list of X here, we get the subcomponents, the arguments. I was wondering, why is review underscore overall, why is this part one unit, but when we look at the AST, that's actually three things.
You can subset that as well.
Okay, so I could have gone X bracket 2, bracket 1, bracket even deeper.
Yep.
Sick. So you really can change things. I mean, it sounds like expert level string manipulation to take a call and then shove in different strings where you want them. But yeah, in terms of, were you going to say something?
Just yes, like I every case I've ever really had for it is like trying to use this. I still don't have any where I need this. I mean, all the factory stuff, like I need this stuff because I'm doing something nerdy in order to use this stuff, you know?
Right. So, and that alone is awesome. Like, I'm trying to, again, like that Shiny app is like a pedagogical learning tool of like, so in terms of execution, I was thinking you can like, based on the function that the user supplies, create this empty list and then shove in all those strings as the arguments down the road. I don't know. These are just food for thought. So yeah, that's calls. That's me attempting to explain calls.
Well,
and
so
now,
I have a I have a thought.
Yeah.
What if you have a really complicated deployer data manipulation string, and then let's say you can manipulate your data frame or your data set to have the same column. So let's say hypothetically you have like multiple data sets which basically have the same data, but then the columns could be different. So in theory, you could build up your very complicated deployer string. Like let's say you take it through multiple rounds of, just all kinds of transformations. And then if you can change your data frames to all have the same column names, like could you then not like use this and apply it like across all of them, like in a sort of like a map or something like that, like one of those vectorized calls? Like could that be like a possible application?
I get what you're saying, but I feel like there's 9 different other ways that I would do that before doing it that way,
Okay.
Like just dealing with the real code. Like you could change all the column names.
Or make a function that does that instead of making a function that pulls apart your calls and makes it. I can see it. I haven't done this yet, but someday all of my packages for work will be a data set that I'm using to analyze my packages for work. And then I can see using all this stuff to like pull apart the code for the packages and look at how I did things. Maybe. Does that make sense?
I'll say one time I've used it is there was some function I needed to use and it was causing an error and it wasn't really important. I just wanted to get past it. So I could just modify the way the function worked by changing the code and zapping that one element. So it basically just removed that line of code from the function. And
nice. I like that. Brute force.
Yeah, there's other ways it could have been done, but it worked.
Another one kind of related that I have this, package idea in the background that I want to make a package that takes like all your imports and does as much of it as it can to just convert it all to base R to reduce your imports for like if you're trying to run something in a really small Docker container or something like that. And that would be another case where you like take the call and modify and like copy the call and do things with the call itself.
So would you be converting tidyverse code to base R code?
Yes, although tidyverse code, a lot of it has C or C++ underneath, and so there's extra fun stuff you have to do there. But that's the idea. That is, and actually, Yanni CD has a package that's similar to that I'm going to start from probably. But
that's kind of. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, I think there's a package called like Pipe Breaker or something like that that will take a long pipe chain and then break it down into individual steps, and basically like assign the output of one pipe to a temporary variable that's then fed into the next element of pipe. And I would imagine that works using some kind of call manipulation like this.
Yeah, and that kind of line of thought, what keeps coming up in my head is like dbplyr and like turning SQL stuff, translating code into other languages. I feel like that's when you need to think about the AST, like go up all the way to there, and then how would SQL do it? How would Python do it? Like this is like a huge digression, but I worked on this project Tidy Blocks as an RStudio intern, where it's like a drag and drop interface for coding, like for kids to learn how to code. And each block has like a backside generator of actual code. So I think that's kind of like, converting languages into other languages. We had to do a lot of string shenanigans. So I was trying to think of other applications than that. But yeah, John, I'm excited about that package, and now it's forever recorded, and we're all going to hold you to it.